Hi everyone, it's Andy from Hobby Headquarters. Well, today I've got a new diorama to share with you guys. This one uses a 72nd scale T54 that you may have seen me build fairly recently. I really like doing the 72nd scale dioramas because A, you can build a whole little scene in a really small little area instead of some of the giant dioramas, which sometimes are great, but they're always kind of hard to find a place, especially even in my store. I'm running out of room quickly in here. It was a lot of fun, and we'll show you all the little techniques that we used in it. So, let's get started. Okay, we're going to use high density pink insulation foam, and I've cut out a pattern here. We want it to be 7 inches wide, and I'm going to actually make it a lot longer than we need because we want to use that same amount of size to make the actual hillsides. And we're going to use a brand new blade here, trying to keep it as straight as possible to keep the edge straight. Now we can draw out where the riverbank will go. Cut that off right here, and we want enough room to appear where the tank came down. We want the river to be about that wide. And we'll take our razor knife again and cut all of this out. Now we can take our knife and start to make the riverbank. Okay, now I've dug out a little bit of a gouge into the bottom here, and that is so when the tank lands in there, it'll have a little more of an appearance that it's dived deep into the mud and water. Now with that being done, we can go ahead and use our Gorilla Glue, which is water activated, to glue these top and bottom pieces together. One thing is the foam, this turns into foam and expands quite a bit, so we want to put some heavy weight on top of this once we glue it, and that'll keep it all together, but it dries fairly quickly. Okay, now I'm going to show you how we're going to make the trees for this diorama. First thing we're going to use is a product called Super Trees, and it is a natural sea product that we can order in the United States here, and actually probably in most parts of the world. And when you pull it out, it's a giant mass of this like sea type of grass, but inside you'll find certain pieces of it that look very similar to trees. So as you pull it out here, and I've been using this one for actually a couple of for over a year now, and still getting tons of them out there. So you'll dig through it, find some to the perfect size, and in a box like this you'll get some 12-inch trees and lots of 4 to 6-inch trees. So this is going to be really good for 72nd scale. And what we've done here is I've taken 5 total trees that we like the nice size, and it's going to be a perfect shape and size for our 72nd scale diorama. This one obviously I've already built up, doing a little test on it. And I like to take them, straighten them out, get them into the nicest shape. And if you get one like this one's got a little bit of a curve to the top of it here, what you can do is you can soak it in hot water, and like we did on this one, hang some weight on the end of it and let it dry, and it'll straighten out any type of curvature in the frame or the trunk of the tree. And now that we have all the trees all laid out here the way we want, we're going to spray them first with a dark brown spray paint. Going to cover them completely here, and then after that dries, we'll go back over it with a medium gray and lightly mist it on and let the two colors blend. Because if you look at the bark of a real tree, most of the time it has a kind of a grayish brown color to it. So we're going to go ahead and do that right now. And here is a close-up of the trees painted with a brown spray paint. And I like to use the brown spray paint because it covers really quickly and you don't have to set up the airbrush. Plus, I do paint these outside because the Tamiya paint's kind of strong smelling, and you want to have a really well ventilated area for it. Okay, once the paint has dried on the tree, we're going to go ahead and just use some spray adhesive. And then lightly start to sprinkle it on right out of the bag. And you can collect any of the excess. That's why we're doing it over a box, so we can reuse it. And depending on how full you want the tree to be, you can put on a second coat of glue and a second coat of leaves. And within a few minutes, you can have a nice little tree ready to go. So I'll finish up the rest of those trees right now. Okay, as you can see, we've got our little forest made up now. And now we're going to airbrush some little highlights and some dark spots on it. First, with the highlights, we're just taking some yellow paint, and only from up above, we're going to spray yellow from coming down as if it's light hitting the piece. And then once that dries, we'll pull them out and flip them over, and from the bottom to the top, we will spray a darker green and give some highlights and some shadow effect. Okay, we've mixed up a batch of cellulose clay that we're going to start to fill in all of the areas here. Plus, I've also taken our rock mold and make some rock faces that we're going to put along some of the edge of the water, but we're going to do that in a little bit of time. I've scored all of the foam here. I have a tendency to think that it makes it stick a little bit better because the actual plaster will soak in there and not want to slide and crack off as easily. So now it's just a matter of going down and just filling in and smoothing out all of this, which will take a little bit of time. Okay, we've got the piece to our general shape that we want, and we've let the plaster now set up probably for about maybe 15-20 minutes, and it's got a little bit of a hard skin on it now, but now we can go over with our finger dipped in water and smooth out any of these rough areas that would not look proper in 70-second scale. Also, I put two little ruts from where the vehicle originally went through. I'm kind of making this as if the tank's been there for a while, so probably won't have any tracks. It'll be kind of all grassed over that it's been sitting in this river for a bit of time. Plus also, I decided to put a little bit more of an outcropping of rock right up on top of here. Liked the way it looked and thought it would be nice to add a little bit of contrast to the terrain. So I will finish this up and we'll let it dry, and I'll show you what it looks like once it's done. Okay, after we've got the basic shape that we want, we let the plaster set up for probably about a half an hour, and it's starting to harden, but it's still soft enough that if we go in there with a wet finger, we can smooth out a lot of these areas in here and blend everything together really well. And gets rid of some of the rough texture. And you don't want to let it dry too much because then it's not going to work that way. But this does a nice job. I've also put two little old ruts where the tank would have been going before it plowed into the river. Okay, the plaster is mostly set up now, and we're just going to put the vehicle into place right now because we want to damage up and dirty up the vehicle a little bit more. So I've started doing a little bit more chipping around the areas, especially more towards the front and around the back of the turret. And now we're going to take some rust wash and give it the look like it's been sitting in the water for a much longer period of time than it should be. Now that the plaster is dry, we're going to start painting the rock outcroppings here. First starting off with a sky gray. Now we're taking the same color mixed with a little white and just tapping on here to blend the colors together and get an ununiform appearance. And to create the shadow in the stone. We're taking some real dark gray with a lot of thinner inside of it. And we're going to put a coat over the entire piece, especially into all the little nooks and crannies that show up everywhere. And then using our paper towel, we'll just blot off any of the excess. And for all the areas that are not in the water, we're going to use a dark earth to pigment. And finally, for the river bottom, we're going to just paint it a dark brown color. We still have to do the highlights on the outcroppings of rock, but we're going to wait till they're fully dry before we do that. Okay, now we're going to build up some weeds and little tiny bushes for our diorama. We're going to use the small bushes by Ammo by MIG, who are actually made by Model Scene if you can't find the Ammo by MIG. Now what we're going to do on these is you pull them off the thing, and they're going to a little bit too large for what I want right now, so we can take our scissors, cut them into quarters, and they'll stay together nice and well, and then at the last, after you cut the quarters, just kind of push it together and shape it into kind of a tall, skinnier bush. And this will go good on making little weeds and little... Okay, now we're taking some of MIG's acrylic mud and we're lining the banks of the shore here with mud down in here, and we're also going to use it down in the pit to actually glue the vehicle to the base. And once this gets put on completely, what I'll do is, since right near the edge of the shoreline here, we'll sprinkle a little bit of our ballast just to give it a little bit of a rock effect, so when we see through part of the water, you'll be able to see some stones. Push that in there so they get glued into place. And then carefully put that in there. Pack a little bit more around the front here. Okay, we're also going to take some of the stuff we use for the trees, but just some of the small end pieces, and as you can see right here, we've pushed it into that mud to make it look like some dead plant material, and we'll do maybe one down over here too. And then when we fill that up with water, it'll look like some of the dead plants have accumulated. And we'll also probably get some sticks and put some behind here too, because the water flow we want going this way, so anything that would be coming down river would get caught on the edge of this tank here. And since the mud is not dry yet, we're going to go ahead and put a little bit more water grass, but this time not dead ones, more of a green color. We can shove it right actually into the wet mud, and it actually stands up pretty good. Okay, we're going to use the Woodland Scenics Deep Pour Water with a little bit of blue dye in it to just slightly tint the water. Definitely follow all the instructions on your manufacturer for doing deep pour water. Okay, we've got the both sides of it dammed up and completely sealed too. Now we're going to use some Mod Podge gloss, and we're going to make some more ripples in the water. Okay, the waves look very, very white right now, as you can see, but they are going to dry clear, and it'll give us a nice little effect that the water is flowing. What I've done now is, waiting for that to dry, I've gone ahead and cut up some basswood strips to seal off our entire diorama to give it a nice finished look here. We're not going to put these on, of course, until we completely remove the tape to make sure everything is ready to go, but we can go ahead and paint these black right now and get ready to put them on after everything is dry. Now, to create the forest litter, I've taken a bunch of dried leaves and pulverized them, and we're going to be putting them through a strainer to get just the smallest pieces out of it, and that'll be our leaf litter for the bottom of the forest floor. Okay, I've poked some holes into the scenery, added some scenic glue, and now we can go ahead and add the trees to the diorama, starting with the smaller trees in the front and gradually getting larger as we go further back. And then we'll use that leaf litter that we made with a little pigment and some pastels to fill in the area after the glue dries. And lastly, I removed the machine gun because I figured if it had been sitting in the water that long, somebody would have come by and taken that off. We've also opened up the hatch and rusted out the edge as well as the hatch itself. And finally, we're going to take some of our pigment powders, and anywhere where the shouldn't be wet mud, we want to kind of soften those down right there and make it an appearance of more dry soil. And in this case, I'm using light sienna, just tapping it in there, trying not to bump the trees too much. And we'll also do some back here. And anywhere there's no grass. Well, here we go, guys. Here is our completed diorama. One thing I should point out to you too is when I designed the diorama, it was meant to be that the tank had not just recently gone into the water, but it had been there for many, many months, maybe even years, and it started to, rust and decay and get overgrowth of foliage on it. Really did love building in 70-second scale. It's so great to do all that little detail in such a small little area. Remember, the actual model itself is only about 3.5–4 inches long, and the entire diorama is only 12 inches. So a very small piece, but with lots and lots of detail. So I want to thank you guys as always for watching, and please stay tuned because we have many more videos coming.